Did it come through?
Oh, absolutely. It was like, okay, we're gonna start in three, two, and Jake just goes. "Rah, rah, rah, rah." All right, so,
Oh,
uh,
I opened my beer.
oh, hi everyone. Uh, I'm James. This is Quantum Beer Break, something that we haven't done in a long time. The other guy is Jake. Say hi, Jake.
Hi everyone. Today I am drinking another brew from local Virginia brewery, Victory, V for Victory. I'm checking out their Easy Ringer Low Cal IPA, which I did not realize was a low calorie beer until I had already bought the variety pack and brought it home.
That sounds horrible. But
It's actually pretty good.
uh,
I mean, to be fair,
I'm drinking root beer.
it's wheat.
I'm drinking root beer because I found out there's a possibility I have celiacs. So more testing is going to be
Oof.
involved. It's like, oh, I can't drink beer. And then we have some other person, some random person over that way.
I'm not drinking paint water. Uh, this is brush
That's a
cleaner.
good start.
I didn't think about that. I should have grabbed a beverage of some sort, but I've behind. I've been painting for a little bit here today.
Nice.
It's a nice thing about this actually is that I've started to catch up on some of those hobby projects.
Yeah, I'm actually printing and painting a ton of dungeon tiles for a D&D campaign.
Cool. Yeah.
I have not put brush to model. I kind of want to, but at the same time, I don't know why. I just have a weird hesitance. Um, what I what I have been doing is doing a lot of social online games and doing some print and play stuff. Print and play solitaire. The board game group Shut Up and Sit Down has done a couple of really great videos on print and play games that I've been trying out based on some of the recommendations. Like just today, I printed out Agent Decker, a James Bond themed solo deck building game.
Nice.
Cool.
So,
It's pretty cool.
uh, since we were not able to make it to Adepticon because of
Nobody was.
a
Yeah.
small cold going around,
Mm.
um,
The Backstreet Boys reunion tour.
the Backstreet Boys reunion tour, also known as Voldemort, is the other thing I've heard it called.
Mm.
Um, we're going to talk to Brian today about everything going on because we were supposed to play Ethereum 2.0.
Yes.
So, what can you tell us about Ethereum 2.0?
Yeah, it's been surreal, hasn't it? It's been very strange. We were at Gamma the week when this all broke, obviously in Reno, and it was really funny because not funny, I suppose, but interesting because they announced they announced the pandemic on the Wednesday, and it was supposed to shut. The convention was supposed to close on Friday, and you could literally see like the hall thinning as the Thursday went on. Like there was like I think it was maybe 2/3 full by the time the day wore out. So, but yeah, obviously Adepticon was canceled the week after, which was heartbreaking for us. Actually, that was really tough because we had kind of a lot of things lined up, and this really kind of put its foot down on everything that was supposed to be happening. Obviously, 2.0 was our number one thing that we were really excited about releasing, what we intended to release at Adepticon, and which has been kind of, I'll explain later, but kind of squished for now because we're literally waiting for some of the US manufacturers to open back up. That's not happening right now, so we're still literally waiting on some product that we were going to have it for Adepticon. But 2.0, Ethereum 2.0 was the big release, and we were super excited about that. But it's going to be interesting. The idea behind, Will is the one that's kind of been pioneering this. He's the lead developer, and his goal in it has really has been to observe the way Ethereum is played. Now, the idea was not to make Ethereum 1.5, if you know what I mean. Like we weren't just trying to. A big part of his design brief wasn't just to try and like adjust to the world, because obviously we wrote the game with 2 factions, and we're now at technically 7 factions. So the game's kind of grown beyond the thing that we started with. So Will wasn't just trying to keep an eye on that, but also kind of think, as we've been to all these conventions and run all the games and Gen Con and Adepticon and Origins and whatnot, to keep an eye on like how people were actually playing. You know, Will's really good at kind of looking at things that are popping up kind of in real time in the real world and kind of responding to those things. So yeah, we've had a lot of ideas about how 2.0 is going to look, and in some ways, actually, this has been a relief because we can continue. I mean, you know, as designers, we want to keep tinkering, and we will keep tinkering until the ink, you know, literally till the moment that it gets sent out to the printer. We're gonna tinker, and you know, if we have 3 months to do that, we'll take 3 months, and if we have 3 weeks to do that, we'll take 3 weeks rather. You know. So yeah, so we're gonna keep tinkering with it until the printers open back up. Things are kind of opening back up in China now, obviously, but we've always tried to keep as much production as possible here in the U.S. So we've got a little while to wait yet before we're back in full swing.
So what is the one big change from the OG Ethereum to 2.0 Ethereum?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is in the way the cycle speed and overclocking worked initially. So in 1.0, you had those two different stats. You had cycle speed and overclocking. And what we found is that we were kind of creating two different things to track that maybe didn't necessarily need to. So what we've done is kind of combine them into what we call a hack resource, which is actually, so we combine them both into one resource, and they're a hack resource. And that actually brings it in line with the RPG as well, because that's what you use in the RPG. So that's kind of cool for us to kind of bring the two games together, let them inspire each other. But the hack resource gets rid of some of the bookkeeping and keeps rather than having, you know, like looking at your card and then looking at the RAM counter as well. Now everything's kind of just on the card, and it's it renews, but not in the same way. So it's more of an resource that you're spending as you're kind of ticking through the game, knowing that you might not get it back. Again, we like those decision points where you're trying to, you know, feel like you've got 10 things you want to do, but you only have, you know, 8 that you can. So you have to prioritize in that way. But that's kind of what we wanted with this. So I'm kind of giving you a long answer to a short question, but we combine those two things, and I love it personally. I think it I don't want to say streamlines the game necessarily, but I feel like it shifts the attention of the focus of the game into the appropriate places where you want it most.
So no more refresh, no more basically overclock.
There is basically a similar kind of thing happening, but instead of basically, so the way hack works is that it's let me get a card. Do I have a card here? 1 second. Let me grab a card real quick. So basically the way it used to work is you had a card, you had a number, a cycle speed, and then kind of like a what do they call that? What's the math term? So like to the yeah, there you go. And so instead of that, you have pips. So you're not looking at a number anymore. You're looking at a pip that you can dot in as you use it. And then the more that you own on the table, the more you're allowed per recalibration to take some of those pips off of your characters. So what it ends up, the way the game used to play in 1.0 is that a lot of times we found that people had an abundance of RAM at the end game. So where there was a scratchy resource in the beginning, by the end of the game they had more than they could really do, or they were doing outlandish things with it. And the way it works in this version is that you tend to have more resources that you can use in important ways at the very beginning, but you are, you're challenged to either kind of let that trickle out over the course of the game, or you can spend it early and then you're kind of scratching for more at the end game. So that people were doing, the kind of coolest parts of the game, manipulating the board and so forth right at the very beginning from the outset, and not waiting to the end of the game to be able to do like just nutso stuff. So that's kind of the way hack works. So as you fill in those pips, you're kind of spending that resource. But then as you recalibrate, depending on how many structures you own, you can remove a certain number of pips. And you get to choose on who you do that in the game. So, I might be quite happy to have my subroutine have expended all of its hack resource, and I'll refresh my avatar, or vice versa. So it creates a different kind. It's a similar but different kind of decision point in the game.
So it's almost like everyone has their own RAM.
Yes, essentially something like that. But again, like, you can spend that resource then also on manipulating the tile, which you couldn't necessarily do. That was only overclocking originally. Or only the RAM resource that could do that originally.
Interesting.
So, of the revamped factions that you guys are looking at, I guess that's a fair question, is how much are you sort of revamping the core identities and sort of the base mechanics of each faction? Because especially for Axiom and oh man, as my brain literally shut down, I wanted to say the Venom, which is not them. Yeah, for Axiom and Nanomay, since I think you guys did benefit a lot from your experience with playtesting and with creating faction identities, I was kind of really curious to see what changes you may have made to the original two.
Absolutely. So everybody gets an upgrade. Everybody gets something new. Some people get a little bit more. So, for example, one of the things we're going to release at Adepticon were a new kind of auxiliary style box for Romux and for the Resex. So a new avatar, a new function, and a new subroutine. So those are going to come together. But everybody was getting either at least a new function and an avatar. Some were getting all three as well. So again, Will's done a great job. But this is the other kind of major change, is that right now we have subroutines, and we have two types of subroutines.
Yeah.
We're also kind of breaking that out into individual things, so that rather than having a subroutine that could either be linked or segmented, you now have those things are kind of individual. So you can have a subroutine or a cog. And a cog is like the what was a linked subroutine, and a regular subroutine is essentially means segmented. So we basically broke out another program identity. So obviously that forces us to go back and kind of revise everything in terms of what old programs were. I guess what you call your force organization gets a bit more interesting as well, where different, you can take an avatar, and this avatar can take two functions and two cogs, or this avatar can take two functions, or an omni and a function, and a subroutine and a cog, so that your avatar brings something to the game that helps you kind of decide what your force organization is as a result of that.
Are they locked into that? So like the one avatar can only bring these things?
Well, not I mean, it still gives you an abundance of choices. It's not structured so that, like, if you take this avatar, you have to take an omni, for example, that type of thing. But that the options are kind of dependent on what the avatar has at its beck and call, if you know what I mean.
So I guess you're gonna have to go back also and then like release new cards for all the old stuff, because there's a couple of programs that say, hey, flip your CS and overclock.
Right, exactly. So that was another thing that we're trying to do, is really hone in on those kind of program identities. And so we have kind of more like a cogs do this, and subroutines do this, and functions work this way. So there's more uniformity across all 7 factions. Not in the sense that they're the same thing, different versions of the same thing, but that the program identity has a really clear demarcation of what it is. So an avatar is going to have more .exes, and a excuse me, and a subroutine is likely only to ever have one .exe, for example, so that there's a real clear kind of demarcation in between them, which I think got a little blurry over the course of the 5 years that the game's been growing so far.
So how does the mercs fit into all this? The extras, I forget what
the operatives. Yeah, the operatives are updated as well. They continue to grow kind of at a slow and steady pace. We're still very keen to get a Beerthralls subroutine in there somewhere. But they're kind of the last faction to get an update, if you know what I mean. we've got the meat of our work has been in kind of working, well, obviously updating the the ROMX and the ResX for this kind of new release at Adepticon, and then kind of working back to Axiom Anime, Akaru, and so on. I have actually, by the way, our new model for the crawler bot. I don't know if you can see him.
Ooh.
He's much bigger. He's much bigger than the old crawler bot.
It looks so much better.
I mean, you can get a sense. So this is actually one of the things I've been painting right now, but you can get a sense that he's much bigger.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
There you go.
Yeah, we were actually joking about that when we first saw it. The original crawler bot was just this little tiny like RC car.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever talked to Will about that, because Will wrote the fluff for that one, and initially had it like crawling, like running over things and like doing all this kind of dramatic stuff, and then the sculptor came through with the model, and we're like, yeah. Will was like, I guess I'll rewrite that part. But that was a product of us working with a new sculptor and not having time to kind of fix things before going out. And obviously those are the kind of things we want to go back and fix now that we do have time, so on and so forth.
Very cool. I am looking very much forward to 2.0 and actually get to play it.
So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when's that going to happen?
They're still looking at Nova Open possibly happening.
I suppose that could be a thing. I kind of
my assumption this year. Yeah, nothing this calendar year is my assumption.
Yeah,
a lot of places aren't canceled yet, but that's specifically because of the weird insurance contracts a lot of conventions have. Is they can't cancel their convention until the state government tells them to.
Yep. Yeah.
Otherwise,
I know, for example, I had heard through a friend of a friend that a big kind of national convention that was meant to be the weekend before in Indianapolis, before Gen Con, has been canceled. And so even though they haven't canceled Gen Con, the fact that the thing that was supposed to be there the week before makes me feel like Gen Con is probably, just a matter of time type of thing.
Yeah, I assume that was just going to go away also.
Yeah, and even if they do open it up, I'm wondering who, you're not going to get 70,000 people together like that, not this year. Somewhere down the line, sure, but I just don't see it, So that's the thing. So 2.0, I imagine at the very latest will be Adepticon next year.
So,
and we're already booked in for that and everything, so.
With everything going on and 2.0 being tweaked and stuff, I'm assuming the next faction that I'm really looking forward to has been pushed out.
Pushed to, that'll be Adepticon as well. That's our plan, to have that at Adepticon as well, because the way we were thinking about it, we essentially were planning on having 2.0 at Adepticon and then Flatliners. I'm still calling them Flatliners. Will has changed the name, but to me they're still Flatliners.
Will's wrong. It's fine.
Yeah, Will's wrong. Yeah, we'll put it to.
But just in case, what's the new name?
Revenants are what he's been thinking of them as lately.
Oh, I kind of like that though. Yeah, I say this with my hand over my mic spiratorially because James can hear me, and I don't want him to feel bad that I disagree with him. I was fully prepared to like the new name just to poke at James, but I actually do like Revenants.
Revenants. Will is going to be happy to hear that. So that was the plan, and obviously, we're not just going to stockpile this indefinitely. We can't just have a log jam, So the idea would be to have 2.0 and Revenants / Flatliners come out next year at Adepticon, and just move forward from there. Kind of pick up more or less where we left off.
So I should save up. Just all my money next year just draining away.
Exactly. Put it in the bank where you can't touch it. Yeah. And I guess that's the other thing too, right? We can't just flood the market, but it's kind of it's a new world that we're trying to figure out how this is going to work exactly. Like we can't flood the market in next March, but we can't sit on everything indefinitely, just hoping that it's got to stay fresh, doesn't it? So.
My cat is being annoying.
Yeah, but so we'll figure it out. We're pushing forward one way or another, you know.
Cool. I know that Jake is trying to start up a RPG,
Ah,
um,
nice.
which leads us
Yeah, that was
into
kind of derailed as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Our Thursday night games have kind of
Yeah.
puttered out because of that. But any updates on the RPG?
Yeah, we've got a new scenario coming out. I think it's going to be out this month. Aaron, I know, is putting some final editorial work on it and putting some artwork in there. But I imagine what is today, the 17th, I imagine it will be out by the end of the month for sure. If not the first week of next month,
Nice.
will be a new, and that will be up on Drive-Thru as a PDF download. And then Aaron's also working on like a booklet to come out with the RPG, broadly under the umbrella of Axiom. So it's going to have something for everyone in there, but it's mostly kind of building out a couple of Axiom kind of nodal points, and including adventures for those nodal points in there as well. But kind of building out, kind of faction by faction. So again, it will have something for every kind of, every disposition in there. But one of the things that the RPG doesn't necessarily do is say like, oh, you're an anime or you're a Karu or you're whatever. I mean, you can be those things as well, but you don't have to be specifically faction aligned right from the outset. So one of the things that we're doing then is kind of building some of those identities into the game now, so that you can play in Axiom space, play in some of the cities, and think a lot more really about what Axiom is really. And that's been cool. Aaron and I've been kind of collaborating on writing some stuff, the fluff-wise, and Aaron's built a lot of really cool stuff in terms of like the way the world works and things like that, rules-wise. So pretty happy with that.
Cool.
So yeah, again, when is that going to
Like
be
a
out?
lot of fun.
And, not sure when that'll be out exactly, but hopefully kind of, I mean, we have to see when the printers open up, basically, I think is the trick with that, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have that out in some capacity. And if the printers aren't opening up or if it's not working out for us, we're just going to ship to PDF and you can download it, that type of thing.
Why not both?
Yeah, Drive-Thru RPG does a lot of great work.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear you guys were able to get a platform there.
Yeah. We got a new GM screen coming out as well, actually. That's coming out pretty soon. But that's going to be, I think the way we're going to have to do that is through Drive-Thru. And I know they've got like a print-on-demand type of thing where you can print something out and they have like a GM screen template, basically. So there's a ton of cool artwork on it, which is one of the things that I was kind of most excited about. I hate to say it, but I was like, oh, look at this artwork, that kind of wraps around the whole GM screen.
And they're just like, you do know there's stuff on the other side.
I'm like, yeah, cool, guys. You do whatever you want with that. I'm going to be on this side. Yeah, exactly. We all have our roles to play, right? But for me, like I loved those old like Dungeons and Dragons GM screens that had like a narrative that wrapped around the whole, like the one guy's carving, a gem out of a statue's eye, and there's a wizard over here doing something, and that type of stuff. For me, it was huge back in the day, and that was definitely in that spirit that this GM screen was made.
Oh, it still is. We still do the same thing. I just bought the Pathfinder 2nd Edition one just for that reason.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good.
Got pretty art.
Yeah.
We do know that you guys have something new in the works, and you've been working some of your time, at least, if not majority of it, on a new game.
Yes.
What can you tell us about it? Is it going to involve Russian cartoon bears again?
No Russian cartoon bears.
I'm not opposed to Russian cartoon bears. I'm just also throwing out feelers.
Yeah. Did you guys get to see Kameradenschweine yet? Is that something you guys had? Because there is another expansion for Comrades out.
It's out now?
Yeah.
Oh no, I have not.
It's Kameradenschweine, so you're Prussians, not Russians. And basically, what happened when we went to Essenspiel last year. And we were translating the game into German. The guy that did translation for us, awesome guy, Volker, was kind of saying like, look, I've translated Frontline No Komrads verbatim, and it just doesn't really. I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't feel like it's not communicating the same kind of emotional thing, you know. And he said, so I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it, and I realized that we already have a word that's like perfect for this, which is Kameradenschweine, which means friend pig. And apparently, a friend pig is someone in a group who tries really hard to help, but actually makes things worse. And we thought, like, yeah, this is absolutely perfect. So we've released, so it's called Kameradenschweine, but the new expansion is a new 55 card deck with all new conscripts, a commandant instead of a commissar. And there's some new scenarios, obviously, but also new updated incoming cards and equipment and things like that that are in there as well. So Kameradenschwein has been, I absolutely love it, actually.
I'm totally going to have to get a new Beerthralls shirt that just has that written across the back. Is it on the website yet?
It is on the website.
It's a good evocative German word, I assume.
But yes, yeah. I just love the fact that there's a word for that, like waiting. You know, it's just waiting for you.
It's German. They have a word like that for everything.
Yeah, just pile those nouns together until you get the right idea. Yeah. So so that's out. But the question was about the new game, and the new game is tentatively titled X Chronos. And so I think I've kind of described it in a lot of ways. It's very different in a lot of ways to anything we've done, in the sense that for example, like, you know, if Aetherium is about playing with space, you know, you're manipulating the tiles on there, you're constantly rotating in there. So the theme of this game, rather than playing with space, is playing with time instead. So the idea is that it's a fantasy game. It's a skirmish miniatures game. You're looking at, you'll never need more than 7 models. That's as many as you could probably possibly use. But in this fantasy world, basically, the premise is that the fantasy world is a magical world. There's this kind of elder race that has kind of dominated the world for years, and they, you know, the kind of hubris, right? They grow too big, they get too arrogant, and they try and pull the celestial body into their orbit to harvest its magic, and it tidally locks the planet. So one side is always facing the sun, the other side is away from the sun, and then this new kind of moon that rotates around the world, and that destroys the original civilization, and then these fantasy races, you know, kind of blossom in the aftermath of this thing. But one of the tricks is that time has become, as the planet's locked, time is kind of locked as well. So the main characters, if you will, what we call the pilgrims in this game, are your main kind of characters on the board are able to manipulate time. And so a little bit like Ethereum, there's this kind of tracking element that happens in terms of who can activate. But we've come, again, you know, part of our design philosophy is always to be creating kind of cutting edge or innovative mechanics. And this is definitely that. And we've really kind of killed ourselves thematically trying to come up with, mechanically, design-wise, trying to make a time game work. And it's been a process, but I think we've got it now.
Well, I've seen him do the drawings. So I know he's got an elf.
Oh, D Forest. Yeah.
He's got an elf and a dwarf that I've seen.
Yeah.
I think the dwarves had like cogs and like timepieces and weird masks.
Yeah, the masks. Yeah.
Which I thought they're absolutely freaking gorgeous.
He's awesome. He's great. Yeah, he's really good.
And actually talking to him while he's actually drawing and stuff.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
It's just weird. Just like you're just talking and like chatting. and then suddenly, so he just realized that he's drawn like an entire section of this creature, and you're just
Yeah,
like, I don't remember him actually doing half of that.
I know. I love that he's just a totally normal guy. He's local here in Chicago. In terms of the fact that he just kind of chats away and he's just talking about whatever. And in the meantime, like this drawing is happening in front of him, and I think it's really brave. I don't know many artists that would be willing to do that. Like kind of show like because I've kind of been with him a couple times when he's doing these, and he'll say, this really isn't working for me, or I don't like the way this looks, and he's like kind of scraps it in real time and starts over, and you're like, wow, like you just erased that in front of me, and I don't think a lot of artists they just want you to see the end, like, oh, here's my genius, that type of thing. And I think it's really cool that he's uh, I guess I don't know, do I want to say humble enough, or like just kind of he's real enough to say like, yeah, that's a process, and here and kind of show you that process and let you kind of be there for it. I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think he did that one when I was like watching. He was just like, I don't like how his looks, and just erased an entire section.
And you're like, ah,
like, oh my god, what are you doing?
It happens. Yeah, it's cool. He's a cool guy. He's really cool. Very talented, obviously, as well.
Any ETA on that?
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
With that artistry and being willing to let go of certain parts of it, it's kind of a rare trait. Like I don't think I necessarily possess it. If I put work into something, like the closest I can get is when I'm DMing something, and the party decides to not do what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I look at what I have prepared, and I have to like, well, I guess I'll shelve this for later. But yeah, it's hard to let go of stuff once you've invested into it. Like not even like resource wise, just like mentally once you're in that headspace.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Yeah. He's great that way. So he's so one of the things that we've done in the aesthetic of the game is that it, like the it looks old, like the pages are kind of parchmenty looking, and the drawings themselves are mostly kind of black and white and one other color, and each faction has its own color. So there's kind of like the aesthetic of the game is really kind of eerie, almost like there's this really kind of darkness to it, and that's one of the things we wanted. So it's a fantasy game, but we wanted from the outset, a big part of our goal was not to do, like, we didn't want tokens elves, we didn't want high elves. We wanted the kind of Northern European elves that steal babies, and like are really dark. Obviously that's not part of the game, but like that kind of atmosphere where they're not these noble creatures, they're these really creepy, nightmarish creatures. And same thing with the dwarves. We didn't want just a bunch of guys, tinkering in mines and stuff like that. We wanted them to have a kind of edginess, and the masks obviously is a part of the culture that we've written for them and things like that. And there's a kind of, we don't really have orcs necessarily, but we do have a kind of a monstrous faction that are kind of based on rock trolls and earthy kind of troll figures that have come from like Scandinavian lore and things like that. So yeah, and who else we have?
So more Grimm's fairy tale than Disney.
Definitely not Disney. Yeah, definitely not Disney. And that, I mean, that's part of the fun of this job, right? It's like you get to do these things and say like, okay, what kind of creepy elves can we come up with, and talk to artists about that.
How can we take a stereotype and just screw it up?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a cool kind of creative part of it too, because sometimes art will come through and Aaron will look at it and say like, what does this guy do? And then writes those rules, like, and vice versa. Sometimes it's like, we need a guy that can do this. I'm like, okay, let me get an artist out here to, draw a guy with, whatever, casting something, or with a big rock, or, a rune on it, that type of thing.
So this is going to be another game where it's going to be like Aetherium. There's going to be a certain set number of factions.
Right now, what do we have? We have 5 factions right now. But the setup with this one is because it is skirmish level, and because it is how do I describe it? it's kind of a much smaller scale game in some ways, but a little bit smaller than Ethereum. Definitely smaller than like most fantasy miniatures game you play. And the way we're setting it up is that you can buy you can buy factions, but you can kind of mix and match your boxes if you want to. So I can take where Ethereum you're kind of on the rails in the sense that if you're an Axiom, you're Axiom. But I could, in theory, take, to just continue the analogy, I could take an auxiliary box from Axiom and an auxiliary box from House of Karu and combine them into my kind of homegrown force for this game. And they come with cards, and it's not a deck builder necessarily, but basically you have a deck that you're drawing from that you're trying to kind of finesse to make your characters to help bring on extra characters as well. But, you can kind of conjure them from out of time. But also, there's spells in there and things like that you can do, upgrades and equipment. So you're trying to draw through your deck to get to the best position you can on the table.
It sounds insanely awesome.
Thank you.
Right,
I'm always going to want to... Well, go ahead.
No, that's you.
So you guys have done really cool things with manipulation of the board space and bringing other factors in before. So I'm pretty happy to wait and see what it looks like on the table, and I can get like some art assets in my hands. I can look at your rule book like a real rules nerd and just be like, yes.
Yeah.
There's been, I think, this is off the top of my head, so I apologize if I'm getting names wrong. Let me see if I can. Have you guys had a chance to play or look at some of the other time manipulation board games last year?
Yeah.
Those kind of
the short answer
is yes. Or seem to you?
Yeah.
There's one in particular. It's I'm trying to remember what it is. James, help me out here if you can. It's very explicitly time travel.
Gotcha. Thank you. I have no clue what you're talking about. You mean the tape games that Bill plays?
I was gonna say my connection's been kind of bad, so sometimes things will just happen.
All right. Well, I think I know what you're talking about, and I don't think that's exactly what. Yes. Go away. Okay.
We may have an out-of-sync communication because I don't know what's asked.
All right. Well, how about this then? Is there any other secrets or tips or anything else you would like to throw to the viewers? And no is an acceptable answer.
about Chronos or about
anything.
Just anything? Yes, there's one more thing. So we've been building on Steam. We've been building. I shouldn't really say we because I've had almost no contribution in this at all. But Aaron mostly has been building a tabletop simulator of this game that we intend to open up for play testers. Obviously, one of the hardest things to do is get good play testing. And so we built this obviously as a product of COVID-19. It's something we wanted to do, but COVID-19 has given it a kind of an urgency that it wouldn't have had otherwise. So basically, you can get onto Tabletop Simulator and play the latest version of Chronos if you like. You have to do that by emailing either myself or Aaron. But we are very keen in the coming weeks, I think by the end of this month, very keen to have that opening up, that play testing. So that will give you a much more precise and in-depth, I think the best possible look you can get at the game at this time, basically.
You'll be getting an email, don't worry.
Fantastic. Can't wait.
Because we've been playing almost nothing but Tabletop Simulator for like the last
2 or 3
weeks.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, is there an Aetherium version of Tabletop Simulator?
Coming, yes.
Sweet. All right, then that will be very awesome for us.
And Frontline No Komrads actually as well. So it's all
better.
There. Yeah. We're trying to respond to the times.
I think would be a good
Yeah, I can make Jake flip the table in virtual too.
That's right. That's super. I love the fact that that's
Oh,
actually part
I've
of the
never
game.
flipped the table at you.
Eh,
Yeah.
mm,
You,
you have rage quit. So,
I have flipped the table on myself.
well, thank you very much for joining us.
absolute
Uh,
pleasure.
and I am looking very forward to everything that is coming out. Hopefully shortly, depending on how things work out.
Yeah, depending on how it happens, for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.